This video is sponsored by Tabletop Table. Sometimes we can have so many hobby projects on the go, or that one tricky one that causes us to lose our hobby mojo. Well, recently I was in the same boat. So here's my tips and tricks on how I got my hobby mojo back. I'm Peachy, and this is Peachy Tips. Doing miniature related hobby content all day, every day may seem like a dream come true, and it is, but it's not without its issues. And those issues sometimes are you just get drained. There's just so much going off, you just get a little bit drained. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through my little tricks on how I maintain or refresh my hobby mojo. Now, some of these tips may seem pretty obvious to me, but they may not necessarily be obvious to you. So let's have a look at the first one, which is tidying up your desk. Now, this may seem counterproductive as your desk or my desk currently has everything I need for the project at hand. So tidying it all away just seems like a crazy choice. But what you're actually doing here is you're refreshing your mental palette and also making it look a little bit more inviting, because sometimes it can get a bit cluttered. And when it gets a bit cluttered, it's kind of off-putting. There's so much going off that it just becomes overwhelming and your mojo just dies. But with a brief tidy up, whether that's just like reorganizing the paints, moving some of the tools away, or a full-on blitz where you just like remove everything, give it a good wipe down and replace it. Honestly, 9 times out of 10, this fixes your hobby mojo straight away. What I have found as well is when I've tidied up, I actually feel like I want to sit down and hobby again. It's like it's re-inviting me to the desk and I'm like, oh, you know what, I do fancy doing some hobby. So this next one I call refreshing your hobby palette, or do a side project or something like that. So it could be that you've been stuck in the rut painting the same collection for a time, whether that's for a tournament or just to play your games with your mates and smash them into dust. But once you've done like a unit of 20, then you've moved on to another unit and then another unit, it starts to get a little bit much and it just kills your enthusiasm straight away, because there's just so much of the same thing going off that it's making it quite hard to get that drive again, to move on and do the next thing. So my little trick for this is I will either mix it up with the collection. So let's say I've done a unit of 20 of figures or like a large unit of 40. I might do a tank, a monster or a character, break it up a little bit. So I'm then giving myself little rewards in between these bigger units. And before you know it, your workload has just flown by and everything's painted. That worked really well when I was doing my Guild army. There was lots and lots of units of inventory, but I broke it up with just like the odd character, the odd stormcast. Sometimes I just paint something because I wanted to, which leads me to my next point. This is a really good palette refresher when you are stuck in a rut, is just grab a different model from something that you may have that might be on your shelf and just paint it. Just paint it because it's different. It could be a Star Wars figure. It could be some fantasy figure. Usually try and aim for something that's probably different, like a different genre or a different army entirely to what you're currently working on. And just by doing that one figure, you suddenly find like, yeah, that was fun, but I'm ready to go back and continue painting the army now. Now, I love painting and wargaming, but I also like playing computer games and unwinding in a soft, comfy game like blowing aliens up in XCOM, or taking over the world in Total War, Warhammer, or just going on a nice little side quest as opposed to trying to save the world in a game called Skyrim. Now, I love Skyrim, big fan of that, but recently Bethesda dropped a bit of a bombshell by releasing out of the blue Oblivion Remastered. Now, Oblivion, that game, that setting, Cyrodiil, is where my heart lies, and I'm a very big fan of it. It does help a little bit that Sean Bean's in it. But before I go too over the top enthusiastically about Oblivion, why it's the best thing ever, let's quickly hear from today's sponsor, Tabletop Table. Looking to level up your gaming setup? Tabletop Table has got you covered, giving you more table on your table. That's a lot of table. For me, this product has 2 very useful and unique functions. With it being portable, it means you can set up anywhere. So fancy a game of Fandooble in the garden, Charlie? Check. We can chill and enjoy the sun whilst playing Charlie's favourite dice game. Or maybe your night owl gaming buds needs a dose of vitamin D. I can set up a game out in the garden. This way they can get some much needed sun, tree bathe and reduce crime in Traitor's Toll all at the same time. But as Connor, the creator, envisioned, I can use this to add more table to my table while still having space to play, as well as extra room to hide or conceal stuff away from prying eyes. It's super easy to set up and comes with 4 accessories, 2 card trays and 2 dice bowls, though I mistakenly used that last one as cup holders for me tea. Oops. There are 2 versions, the Hexlite, a super lightweight portable and cost-effective version, or Relic, a solid walnut crafted portable gaming table, heavier for sure, but oozes quality. I can't help but stroke this wood. Check out the Kickstarter, link in the description. All backers will receive at least 10% off all retail tabletop items. So if your table is in desperate need of more table, then go get yourself some Tabletop Table. So let's get back and talk about Oblivion Remastered and how this revitalised my hobby mojo. Well, up to this point, before Oblivion came out, I had a ton of projects on the go. I had lots of video-related content to make. I often try and make those videos align with my personal projects, but that's not always the case, especially when you do sponsored content or you just want to do something for the audience and you beautiful people out there, you're like, you know what, I've not done something World War II for a while, so you do something. And I enjoy making the videos. They're really good fun. But I've got lots of my own personal projects on the go as well. I want to do some Barons War stuff. I want to do a lot more fantasy related stuff, get some more warbands done for Rangers of Shadowdeep, Frostgrave. I want to do some stuff for 5 Leagues from the Borderlands. I also want to play this amazing game that's up here called Traitor's Toll. Now, recently I was invited to War Games Illustrated to learn how to play Traitor's Toll with the mighty Graham David, the creator of the game, which was awesome fun. I am going to be doing a full-on video about that, and that should be next week. So do stay tuned for that, unless something horribly goes wrong and I forgot a sponsor or something like that. But yes, Traitor's Toll, there's a lot, you need a lot of civilians for it, you need some guards, and I was losing my mojo. And I just like, I don't know what to do. Maybe I should just do something different. And after playing Oblivion, what it did was it reset my brain because I got super excited. I remembered why I like all the town guards and all the cool colour schemes. And I was like, maybe Peach, I could combine Traitor's Toll with Oblivion and all these other games that I really like 5 Leagues and Frostgrave. Oh, I've got loads of like men-at-arms sets and feudal knights and peasants, and I got all these guards from Traitor's Toll and civilians. Maybe I'll just smash all these kits together and make some amazing, cool looking, fun, Cyrodiilic, Tamriel sort of races and guards. Let's do that. So that is what I did. Now, anyone that knows me and knows this channel will know that when I get my teeth into something, I get a bit carried away and suddenly it just snowballs. And that's what's happened here, is I started building up a bunch of guards using all these kits I just mentioned. And I just added a little bit of play, doing some test colour schemes here and there. I re-envisioned my Bruma guards, my Skingrad guards, and I was having the best time doing this. And that is something that really I want to focus on here, is like that one game just coming out, or that, it could be any other game. This is what's worked for me. Just playing a random game has now done all this for me. It's got me thinking about Traitor's Toll. Maybe I could do like a different angle on it. Maybe I can do it where it's focused on Cyrodiil as opposed to Traitor's Toll and the background for that. Or maybe I can do both. I don't know. But I wanted to build some Khajiit. I wanted to build some Argonians. I wanted to build an Orc. I wanted to just do some bandits. And then I'm like, oh, you know what? I could turn this into a nice little campaign. Maybe I should do some narrative battles with it later on down the line. But just by doing these little test models and just coming up with some colour schemes, and I think that was something that really helped as well. I was like really eager to paint some of these things up. Now, what I will say is at the time of filming, I got hit by the lurgy, and I did have intentions to do like more focused painty stuff. So teaching or explaining how I went about freehanding my shield designs and like colour choice and like doing different guards and stuff on the different towns, and then maybe solving the problems of how do I do this coat of arms for this faction or whatever, because there's about 8 towns, cities, and they all have very different looking vibes, and I really like all of them. There's a couple of tough ones, but one called Shadenal and one called Anvil, which have some very interesting patterns which will be hard to freehand. So I want to do a proper video on that. So that's just me just looking for another excuse to do another Oblivion related video, especially if this one goes down well. If it doesn't, maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just keep it to the patrons for Workbench weeklies or something like that. But that aside, I just steamrolled my enthusiasm and built a load of guards. I built a load of like, I guess, bandits and highwaymen to use in games, maybe as baddies, maybe as just people to go around the town. But what it did do was get my mojo back for Traitor's Toll as well, because I did actually end up painting a bunch of guards just for that, which was great. I really enjoyed it, as well as getting some civilians built up. They're not painted yet, so that's for next week's video. I want to talk about how I go about painting civilians, so I've held fire on those. But the great thing with the game, after playing this with War Games Illustrated and Graham, is a lot of your civilians can be armoured warriors as well. They don't all have to be like farmers or peasants or like some kind of tradesman or something like that. So you could have like the odd hedge knight or wizard wandering around in the crowd. So that is perfect, especially from an Elder Scrolls point of view, because you're going to have like the Mages Guild and the Fighters Guild wandering around the town. Maybe there's a Thieves Guild guy. So the next dilemma I had now, because I've got myself all invested and excited about painting all these Cyrodiilic, Elder Scroll-esque miniatures, was like, I'm definitely going to use Traitor's Toll. I definitely want to do like some fun game where maybe the hero, my character, is helping the guards out in Coral, or maybe Skingrad or Bruma, and there's some Thieves Guild we're going to try and track down this, that, and the other. So I could use Traitor's Toll for that. But then it got me thinking about like other game systems I can combine. And there's the obvious one, which I know a lot of shouting at the screen now going, Peachy, there's Elder Scrolls Call to Arms. Yes. Now, I tried to get hold of that. It was out of stock. So at the time of filming here, I've not been able to get it yet. So if and when I do another video about Oblivion and painting the guards and this, that, and the other, I would like to do more focus on Call to Arms as well, because it's Skyrim related, but it does say Elder Scroll Call to Arms, so it kind of makes sense that it kind of fits with everything. And you'll have like your race specific things in there as well, so it covers your Khajiit, your Argonians, your Orcs, all those other random elves, there's many. So yes, that's for another time. But in the short term, I was looking at this going, you know what, if my main character wanted to be something more Mage Guildy, I'd probably use Frostgrave. Maybe if I wanted my character to be more Fighters Guildy, or maybe Thieves Guildy, maybe I'll use Rangers of Shadowdeep. Joe McCullough, the creator of both those games, very smart. The game systems are almost identical, maybe some little tweaks here and there, but from a stat line point of view, it's pretty much the same mechanic. So you could combine the two anyway. So you could have a ranger and a wizard if you wanted a wizard in your party. But it depends on you as the player. If you're into like Oblivion and Skyrim, some folks like to be wizards, some folks like to be fighters. But picking one of those rule systems will work for that. But one of the other things I was looking at was 5 leagues from the Borderlands, because you can make yourself a little area map. It could be the town and like some locations around it. You can have a small warband of like a handful of figures. So for me, what I'm going to be doing is using 5 leagues from the Borderlands as a basis for the campaign. I will probably play the odd game of Frostgrave, the odd game of Traitor's Toll, the odd game of Rangers of Shadowdeep, Call to Arms if and when I get hold of it. But from a campaign system point of view, it's perfect. And I kind of want to do the story thread of when I've just found Martin. Now, if anyone doesn't know, Martin is played by Major Richard Sharp. I mean, Martin is played by Sean Bean. Sorry, Sean Bean. The greatest man. He is Martin Bastard Septim. And I mean, what more do I need? He's got to be in my warband, right? So I'm going to have me, the hero. I'm going to have Martin. I'm probably going to have some form of wizard, some form of fighter. Maybe Joffrey, who, not the Joffrey to be confused by Game of Thrones. He's a murderous maniac. This is a priest from Wayne Priory who helps out. Also a blade. That was something else as well. Slight tangent here. Mixing some Japanese kits together with some Dark Age kits. Oh yeah, you can make some blades. It's not perfect, and that's something I want to mention as well with some of the builds. They're not identical to the game, but they are paying homage to the game. And that's kind of one of the things I wanted to do with this, was like use the Wargames Atlantic kits and the Traitor's Toll stuff, which is by Wargames Atlantic as well. But yeah, I just have a mix of like random characters in the game, because in 5 Leagues on the Borderlands, it recommends 6 characters. You can have some followers, which is great, because if you are playing in a campaign, some of those followers could be, maybe you've done a Fighters Guild quest. And that's the other thing, there's so much to say about 5 Leagues on the Borderlands, because you do quests. So you could actually narrate this whole thread, which is like, maybe I'm going to do the main quest from the story, which is to take down Mehrunes Dagon and the Mythic Dawn. Or maybe I'm going to do some side quests and make a thread, which is like a bunch of Fighters Guild one. So instead of having like Martin hanging around and all these other characters, maybe you have like the dudes from the Fighters Guild, or the dudes and dudettes from the Mages Guild, and this, that, and the other. So, you know, there's so much you can do with these rule systems and combine them all together. It's amazing. But yeah, playing one game of Oblivion, I've gone down a right rabbit hole. Now, as I did mention, I am feeling a little bit under weather. Everyone feels under weather at some point. It's fine. It's normal. But what do I do to make myself feel better? Simple thing. No medication. Don't need that. Not even a walk or some sunlight or some water or vitamin C. No, what I need is I need to paint a Sean Bean figure. That is what's going to make me feel better. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to smash a couple of kits together from the Wargames Atlantic sets. And as you can see here, this is my version of Martin Sean Bastard Septim. And what I've used is a body from the Traitor's Toll Civilian set and just a couple of arms from the Peasant Levy, which are all interchangeable. This is the great thing. All the chivalric stuff that Wargames Atlantic have done, the Traitor's Toll stuff, and most of their kits, in fact, their fantasy kits, they're all interchangeable. And it's really, really good. The head is is the rifleman head, the one I use for Sharp, although it doesn't look Sean Beanie nowadays after so many people have said it looks like Harrison Ford. So it is the Harrison Ford variant of Sean Bean, Martin Septim, Major Richard Sharp. That's what it is. So I built that guy up, just kit bash. It was a really straightforward kit bash. It was just like a body from one set, some arms from another set, and a head from a different set. You don't have to do that. You can just use one set's worth. I mean, the peasants have got quite a lot of stuff. Now, I know Martin is like a monk. He's the guy in the church. So I would have liked a longer robe on that. But you know what? It's fine because I just want to paint him up and use him in a game. But anyway, I'm going to paint Martin Bastard Septim up now and make myself feel better. It's going to be a small paint guide about painting up some random monk dude. But hey, you don't have to watch it. You can skip it if you want. Right, I'm going to go and paint Martin Bastard Septim. I've said that so many times now. I'm so sorry. So, after beginning with a grey undercoat, any grey would do, I am going to use something called Runic Grey, which is a speed paint. And I'm just going to apply that all over because I want that kind of bluey grey tone that Martin's robe seemed to have. So that's what I'm going with here. Then what I'm going to do is dry brush over with a grey here. I'm going to use some deep grey, and all I'm doing is just gently tickling over the top areas just to pick out a little bit of a highlight. Nothing too crazy. This is a nice easy way of getting a highlight. Alternatively, what you can do is use the same colour and then just do some fine edge highlighting. What I'm actually doing is not doing fine edge highlighting here. I'm just like picking out the odd fold and doing my little jaggedy highlights, which makes it look a bit more torn and battered, like old cloth should. And in some places, just thin the paint down ever so slightly, and you can just use that around like his chest and his back as well. Just like what I'm doing here on the back. So it's just slightly thinned down. It's not straight from the pot. And of course, just pick out any folds and creases that you find. I'm also going to do a bit more of a layer on his trousers as well. So look a slightly different tone of grey to the rest of the robes. Then I'm going to get Stratos Blue and pick out his shoes or boots. I wanted them to be a different kind of tone. I didn't want to go traditional brown or anything like that. So I thought, you know what, I'll go for a bit of a bluey tone. You often see these blue suede shoes in Oblivion and stuff. So I thought I'd go with that. I'll go for some blue suede shoes. After that, it's just picking out any leather details. For the leather, the wood and his hair, I'm just going to use the same colour. So this is Brigadine Brown. So I'm just going to base coat over his belt and pouch. I'm not sure what's in his pouch. Probably some apples, maybe a cheese wheel. I don't know. Don't know what Martin Septim eats. Then picking out his quarterstaff or his staff. I'm not sure if he actually has a staff, but made him feel a bit more priesty. And then, of course, his hair. That will probably change with some washes and maybe a bit of grim black later on, but it's a nice base coat of brown over that hair, and I might change my mind. Then I'm going to pick out his skin. Initially, I like to use Paratrooper Tan as it has some nice coverage, and I just really like the tone of it. So I'm just going to base coat all the flesh areas with Paratrooper Tan. I did make a bit of a mess there on his sleeve and hands, so I'll tidy that back up later on. I'm not going to stress too much about it right now. So just get the rest of the skin done, get his face done. And in some places, you might want to do a second coat if some of that colour is shown through. And then going against standard Peachy tradition, I'm only going to shade over a couple of areas. I'm not going to do an all-over shade like I normally do. Just going to pick out some areas. So the wood areas, the leather areas. I'll do his boots and trousers, but the grey robes, I'm happy enough as they are. So I'm not going to shade over those. Pretty chuffed with them. So I'm going to leave them as is. So this is more of a section shade. And obviously same for the belt. And then I'm going to save the skin for a different colour. So I'll be using like a flesh tone for that. So yeah, just apply that all over where you want it. So the belts, the boots, the trousers, the hair. And then when that's dry, move on to the next colour, which is Crusader Skin. And I'm just applying that to the skin. So initially, I'm just going to do a coat over the face, the hands. And then if I need to, I can always add some more around the cheeks and eyes as well. Now, after shading, sometimes you want to like add a bit more punch to some colours. So on his boots, I'm just going to tidy back up some of those raised areas. It kind of acts as a highlight as well. So I'm just doing that over his boots. You can do it over his leather as well if you really wanted to, but I'm just doing it on the boots here. And of course, we'll need to look at doing the skin as well. For his skin, I'm going to use some barbarian flesh. Normally, I tend to tidy back up with the same colour I base coated with, but I just wanted his skin to be a bit more punchy here. So I'm using barbarian flesh. It's a little bit lighter. So I'm just going to go around picking out the extremities. I do apologise for the little jump here and there on some of the base coat of the face because the footage was a bit blurry. I'll put that down to being an idiot, mostly. So just work your way around, pick out any like knuckles and raised bits, layer anything you want to. Now, if you are finding the skin's a bit too bright, we can do something called a glaze. So what I'm going to do is get that Paratrooper Tan, really thin it down so it's almost like the consistency of milk or speed paint. And then I'm just going to gently apply that over the skin. And what it will do as well is it will just give it a little bit more of a subtle blend between the two colours. So it's not like jumping from like a dark tone to barbarian flesh. Then still using paratrooper tan, I'm going to use that to just highlight the leatherwork, because actually it is a light tone for the browns, so it makes sense to use that as a nice highlight for them. So that's what I'm doing here, just going around picking out those highlights. I'm only going to do this on the leather belt and the pouch. I will do something different when it comes to his quarterstaff later on. Then it's just a matter of just highlighting his face. So I'm going to get something called amber skin, just pick out some extremities, nose, brows, cheeks, the usual, knuckles, you know, anything that feels like it stands out and just needs a little bit more punch. You don't have to go mad. I tend not to. Some people do, and their models look far better than mine. But, you know, it's just a gaming piece for Traitor's Toll. Smart in Septim. I should give him more love. It's Sean Bean. But I'm having fun. A little highlight of ash grey on some of the grey bits as well. Just a bit more punch, because those buttons were disappearing a bit. Also using that same colour to highlight on the boots as well. Tie it in nicely as well between the grey cloth as well as the boots. Just quickly pick out the belt buckle, because I almost did forget about that. And then just drop in some grim black into his eye slits. Also, another thing you can do with something like grim black is just go around and add a little bit more extra definition to some of the areas where they meet with other colours. So like where the hands meet the sleeves or the boots meet the trousers, whatever. It just helps add a little bit more of a bridge. Certainly if areas look a little bit wishy-washy, or that area where I made a mistake where his hand and sleeve was. So you can just work your way around, pick some of those areas out. I'm also going to make his hair look a bit darker. I think in the old Oblivion it was a bit more brown, but the new one looks like it's got more darker hair. So I decided to go with darker hair. And lastly, I'm going to get something called Desert Yellow. And initially, I'm just going to stipple that round his robes. So it's not quite like a dry brush. I'm still leaving some of it on there. And I'm just going to do some stabby motions around the base of his robe, just so it looks a bit more dusty or dirty. So I'm just going to work my way around doing that. I can also like dry brush a little bit around the feet as well. So what that will do is just look like he's got dust caked on his boots. I often find doing stuff like that looks quite visually pleasing as well. So it looks a little bit more natural, like he has been like doing some walking. Oh, he's just got dirty robes. I'm also going to dry brush over his quarterstaff as well. So that gives it a bit more of a woody effect. And in some places, a bit like a glaze, like the glaze consistency I use for the paratrooper tan. I'm just going to apply that around the base of the robes as well, because that will, as it dries, it will be a little bit more translucent, but you'll see a bit more of a subtle caked up dustiness to it as well. I initially started at the bottom of the robes, but I thought, you know, around some of the top areas as well. I mean, after all, he is a priest of Akatosh, so he's probably going to be wandering around serving his parish and getting a little bit dirty. And obviously he's been besieged in the town of Kvatch and hiding in a church. Also, using that desert yellow, I can just add a little bit of wood texture. So all I'm doing here really is just doing some streaks up the staff. You don't have to do this. I just thought I'd do it as just to show you that it's an effect you can do. In some places, you can do some broad strokes here. It's a bit more neater, a bit more straight from the pot, and just adds a little bit more definition. You can go lighter as well. If you wanted a slightly lighter colour, you can always do that for the wood grain. And there we are. There is the majestic form of Major Richard Sharp, cunningly disguised as a random man in a church. The buggers are going to easily fall for this, and Mehrunes Dagon has no idea what's coming his way. I tell you what's coming his way. Major Richard Sharp with a swift kick in the nuts. Yeah, take that, Mythic Dawn and weird Oblivion god monster. And as always, a massive thank you to all of you for watching and getting this far. Big thank you to all my supporters on Patreon as well. You guys are beautiful. I hope you found something useful in this video, whether that is some tips and tricks for getting your mojo back, whether you are like, you know what, I never thought about tidying my desk, or yeah, actually breaking up my flow of painting with like a monster or a character has now solved my mojo problems. But the big thing for me is sometimes you just got to go completely different and just do something very different. And playing Oblivion is what did it for me. It might not necessarily be Oblivion for you. It could be some other game like Destiny or whatever the kids are playing nowadays. Minecraft. It might even be Minecraft that gets you just like, you know what? I'm going to build a board that looks like a Minecraft board and do a Minecraft war game. Don't know. Might be that case. That's not a terrible idea, actually. I know Charlie would like that. But yes, big thank you. All the beautiful people that are going by. You're all awesome. And I'm sorry for being a little bit under the weather. I know I've said it a couple of times, but I do apologise. It must sound awful in your ears right now. Listen to this like bunged up, weird, croaky-assed old guy talking about Oblivion and getting excited about painting random guards and stuff like that. But I'm now going to go off and maybe write some graphic and criminal poetry about Martin Bastard Septim kicking Mehrunes Dagon in the nuts. I think that would be a nice little add-on to any battle reports I may or may not do with Sean Bean's alter ego as a churchman, a man in a church that you rescue, who becomes the emperor. Spoilers. If you've not played the game, I mean, it was made in 2006, so if you've not played it, I'm sorry. I kind of ruined that for you. I won't tell you what happens to him, but it's played by Sean Bean. Okay? Just want to throw that out there. Martin Septim is played by Sean Bean. And what happens to Sean Bean in movies? Other than Sharp and The Martian and Ronin. Other than those movies, what normally happens to Sean Bean? Yeah, I know. If you got this far, sorry. Right, I'm going to go. I'm going to go and sneeze and blow my nose and then edit. Because I like editing. Bye.